Welcome back to Bless Your Heart, I'm Talking. This is your host, Zeta, and you are getting probably the last bonus episode for a while. This is going to conclude the little poetry, cowboy poetry thing. This is by far my favorite one that I wrote, and it is a long one. It's more of a prose, I guess. And I basically... If you listen to the podcast regularly, you know that I frequent my family cemetery out in Saba County. My mom is buried there. I've spread my brother's ashes there, but also I have multiple generations of my family there, which I've lately been talking about and posting about them on some of my finds. And it's been real interesting. I've recently found Zeta, who I'm named after, and just a bunch of other people. But I wrote this before I found them and before I knew everything. But a bunch of them are in the cemetery, so it's like I knew they existed. I just didn't know all the dynamics exactly, and I didn't know a few things. And so I really didn't know much about Zeta in particular. So I've been going down this family thing, and that's what made me decide to read the poems, because this poem was inspired by my family in the cemetery, because I would go up there to kind of clean up, and I kind of maintain their graves a little and pull weeds and bring flowers and rocks. And I'm always kind of, I don't know if I'm talking verbally to them all the time, but in my head, but often verbally. I'll go down there and have a shot of whiskey with my mom and talk, because I'm a little crazy, I guess. Anyways, off the subject. So I go down there a lot. So I decided to write this about everybody in the cemetery that I could include, which I can't possibly include them all because there's so many. But one of them in particular is not someone related to me, but I've talked about it before, and I'm going to post the headstone. But there's a broken headstone, a few headstones down from my mom, and it's of this gentleman. And it's a hand-carved headstone, and it's from over 100 years ago. I think about 120 years ago. And it says that he was murdered by a band of horse thieves. And it's misspelled, and it's hand-carved, and his name does not match anybody else, so we assume he's a hired hand. But that's all we really know. But he was alive at the same time as a lot of people in the cemetery I'm related to. And it's a very small cemetery with very few outsiders. So that means he knew them. There weren't a lot of people around. So I wrote this story about him, including my family. And then we get a little surprise guest appearance by my brother's horse, Cat Daddy, who is still alive and well and living with our horses out in San Saba on Bonnie's ranch. So that's when Rick and I go see our horses. That's where we go. And Cat Daddy is often in those pictures. And Cat Daddy was one of Zoel's best friends. So I decided he could be in this as well. And I'm going to tell you, I struggle with the lead character's name, because how do I know how to pronounce it? And I've asked multiple people, and there's multiple ways you can pronounce this. And so I fear it's going to be wrong no matter what. So whatever comes out is what comes out. But it is, it could be Jose, it could be Hosea, it could be Josue, like everyone asked to. So I kind of go with Hosea, but we'll see. Anyway, so here we go. And so this one's called Hosea, the name I can't pronounce correctly. Maybe I am. And you're going to hear the pages turn, so there's just no way around that. This is how I write, and it's just a lot to type. I can't sit still that long. So here we go. That old cutting horse was almost 16 hands. He walked a little funny. He traveled over so much untamed land. If that old bay had gotten his way, our cowboy, Hosea, might have ended up in Canada. But he was determined to get to Texas. But by that man had a plan, and he was guided by the sun and the moon, and they got to the new home pretty soon. 2 peas in a pod, they had traveled so far and become more like father and son. Hosea was gentle and tough with his commands, and he didn't take much to get old Cat Daddy riled up, but Hosea would get him just right. With the pull of his reins, he'd pull it back just right. And they moved with the wind, and they slept below the stars and the clouds. And sometimes bedding down in the places they wouldn't be found. It was a long trip to Texas, land of the Comanche. Little did they know of the dangers to unfold. They had to jump over snakes and jumping through so very many hoops. And by the time they reached the hills, old Cat Daddy was very skilled, and he could read Hosea's mind by the way he shifted on the ride. Brothers for almost a year it took them to get here. They finally made it to McMilan Settlement. Built on the Colorado River, central Texas, he found a little slice of heaven on those sacred grounds. He got a job right away, cowboy, and for Hugh Miller, and Mr. Miller gave him a place to stay. Keeping his herd maintained, he was a puncher by trade, so this worked out real good, most people would say. After a few years protecting the Miller Ranch, he met a beautiful little filly, one of Hugh Miller's kin. Little Miss Miller, she was tall and thin. She loved to dance and to sing, and she was great at storytelling and just about everything. Josiah knew she would make a fine wife. His plan was to move every mountain to give her that life. Maybe they could have their own cabin on the hill like Hugh Miller did. McMilan was growing up and was almost big enough to be considered a town. Once a week, he would ride around and spend the day showing little Miss Miller around. During the day, he rode for the brand, protecting the horses and rounding up the calves that hadn't been found. Then it was a Friday, and he was raring to go, because come morning, he and Cat Daddy had a little lady to show. Hosea had planned to take little Miss Miller on a little ride, and Cat Daddy would guide. And he had planned to get her to the wedding oak, to the tree. He would bend down on one knee. So Friday, Hosea rose from his bed, ready to round up the horses and get that cattle fed. Cat Daddy and Hosea headed out, gathering up the horses, planning out their route. As they came up to a set of trees next to that wild Colorado, this dynamic duo saw some natives rounding up their horses, ready to head out into the hills of Texas. Then they were horse thieves out of desperation. The natives had been run off their lands. They were stealing anything they could to save their lives. Thieves out of desperation. Maybe perhaps malice. Either way, it was Josiah that had to stop them. So he headed that way, 3 against 1. He knew it was a risk, but this wasn't his first rodeo, and he trusted Cat Daddy to be by his side. It was his job to protect Hugh Miller's land so he could make his kin his wife. The plan was to come up east and cut them off at the river and push them out. Cat Daddy rode fast and rode hard, and they made the pass, and that's when they realized he might not get out. It wasn't just 3. It turned out it was an entire band of horse thieves. He was outnumbered, and he knew it. He was in for a fight. They surrounded him quickly, but he fought them off until night. 2 other Miller cowboys appeared just in time to see Josiah to be killed by that band of wild horse thieves. Brave until the end, Cat Daddy went with him, and now Josiah is buried out there on that hill in McMilan Cemetery. And little Miss Miller, he never did get to marry. She made sure he was buried just right in between the Millers and the McMillans, nestled in with his almost kin. And yes, the body of Josiah and the heart of his best friend, Cat Daddy, with him until the end. And that was it. That's my last one. I hope y'all liked, the poetry section, and maybe I'll do it again. We'll see. But that was it, the ones that I performed, so I thought I would just keep them together as a grouping. And thank you. And if you want to leave any likes, reviews, or send any messages to me about it, any suggestions or comments, it really helps me out on the algorithm whenever you like or comment or, leave anything. So share, tell people, all that good stuff. Zeta Owens on Facebook and Z Mamacita on Instagram, or bless your heart, I'm talking on Instagram. And, let me know what you think. Y'all have a wonderful week.